Hey, thanks for clicking on this video. If you didn't see the previous part, make sure you go and watch that before this one. But we do want to get into the science of it, because that is basically what a lot of people base their fundamental materialistic perception, their physical perception of reality in the world. So there are a lot of very credible scientific theories that actually correlate with not only the way that the planets and the stars influence us on this Earth, but also how the ancients perceived them influencing us.
What, Matt? There's no way the ancients knew about solar wind. Or did they? They could have, and they could have just given it a different name.
Right. You know, fire from the heavens. So there are a couple theories that you should be familiar with going into this. The first theory I think that we should discuss would be cosmic radiation theory, and this is basically this is a big one, just because it is. It's a theory that's kind of picking up a lot of momentum, and in my personal opinion, after doing a lot of research on it, I would argue that it's very real. Cosmic radiation theory is the theory that, as you were probably taught in school, regardless of your location, if you have a decent education, you probably learned about the magnetic poles of the planet, the north and the south, and how that energetic field around the Earth is what dictates a lot of different aspects.
It also protects us.
It also protects us from, you know, UV light from space and the sun
and the solar wind.
If
we didn't have this electromagnetic barrier around our planet,
we would be torched.
We'd be done.
We'd be dead. So it's very important. However, what a lot of education systems also don't go on to teach you is that everything that has any basis of DNA or any sort of life-bearing structure has an energetic field. You have an energetic field. I have an energetic field. Anything...
I don't.
Yes, you do. The planets, additionally, the seven celestial heavenly bodies, also, the governors, they also have energetic fields. Now, why does this matter? Because these bodies, these entities, are so massive and large that as they circulate and they use gravitational force to go around the sun, there are different energies that they have to send out just based off of their massive makeup. This also ties in with another scientific theory called the electromagnetic universal theory, which is basically that all life within the universe is created through two concepts of duality, which would be electricity and magnetism. Okay?
I have heard a tiny bit about this.
Right. So for a great example would be the sun is very electric. That is what gives us life. However, Saturn is very magnetic, and this is why in these stories they go and combat each other, because Saturn, being the magnetic force that it is, and you can also do there's plenty of scientific research that you can read about on how Saturn has very heavy magnetic properties. That the magnetism of Saturn is, because it's so massive, is what assists all of the other planets within Saturn to remain kind of centered around the sun. But it's the sun and its electric force and its heat and its life-bearing essence that gives us life on this planet. So it's these two encompassing bodies that, I mean, you know that you're taught in school, your brain a lot of the time communicates through electromagnetic, or rather, your brain communicates through electric impulses.
It's a computer.
It's basically like a mini computer. That's exactly right. So electricity is all throughout your body. But the same is said for magnetism, because you have to have some semblance of magnetism or gravity to be able to stick to the Earth. You know, that gravitational force is what keeps you locked on the planet. It's what keeps all the other planets around in a revolution, while the sun is able to bear the light that gives that electric force of life-bearing creation. So the electromagnetic universe theory is an all-encompassing theory that says all throughout the entire spatial realm, whether you're within our galaxy or you go beyond our galaxy, everything is essentially made up of these two properties, electricity and magnetism. Now, going back to the cosmic radiation theory, because of this, these two forces are constantly at play with each other all throughout the stars. You have to remember, let's take the moon for example. You were probably taught in school that the moon controls the tides, it controls a lot of breeding cycles for animals. It controls a lot of different mating cycles or life cycles for insects as well. Birds, they have some type of influence based off of the energy from the moon. Well, if the moon can control the mass oceans, why would it not have control over maybe even subtle influences on something
Yeah,
like
not even control, just influence.
Influence, yeah, I shouldn't say control, but it's an influence over the human body. Well, here's the thing. The moon and the sun, you should know, both have those influences on you. Okay? You know that if you go and you sit out in the sun, generally you feel better. You have different, you can chalk it up to whatever chemical reactions you want to say, dopamine, serotonin, yada yada.
You literally get nourishment from the sun.
If you're out from the sun, if you just stay blinded up, like you're more prone to get sick, you're more prone to be depressed, etc., etc. The moon is the same as well, where the moon has its own influences on us as human beings. So it's not impossible to say that just because these planets are further away, like Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and Venus, and Mercury, that they don't have an influence on us either. Because most of the ancients do believe that they did, and in all actuality, if you were to go and look up something like your natal chart, you would find that they do have some semblance of minor activity and minor influence on our lives.
And also, just going off that, it's like you think that the distance must matter so much. Perhaps to you because you're a tiny little human being. But that distance to a planet is it's not consciously contemplating the distance between you.
If you want to talk about planetary distances, all the planets in our galaxy are just neighbors.
When we say things like maybe they knew about solar wind, they just gave it a different name, that's a little tongue-in-cheek.
Right.
But what we're really getting at is there's frequently things said by people outside of what you could say the scientific community, going all the way back in history, and a lot of the time it has to do with astrology or spiritualism or old school alchemy. Not the BS, modern day version of alchemy where it's just a bunch of rich yuppies were just hanging around, just dropping solutions onto lead to turn it into gold. That wasn't what it was about at all. Not even close.
A lot of misconceptions.
It's about transforming yourself in here and in here
and
getting up there.
Yep, pretty much.
But what we're really talking about is these people noticed the effects of these things in different realms. Not the realm of science, in the realm of spirit, in the realm of mind, in the realm of consciousness.
Right.
They noticed it. And just because they were not able to find a scientific measurement or way to replicate it in a hard data way does not mean that what they were discovering or noticing or writing down was real.
Right.
Because what frequently keeps happening is science lags behind and then is eventually able to find a way to actually track down this information in a scientific way. One of the best examples is the sun and the moon.
Yep.
Because for the sun, people were saying for years and years and years, okay, the sun has to do something. It has to provide something for life.
Yeah.
It gives its energy.
Yes.
And when in terms of just like pure science, unless you were to put a specific name on that energy,
you can
just say
feel
energy,
the energy from the sun.
Science would sort of scoff at that. They would say that the sun isn't sustaining you. It's not God. It's not a spiritual thing. And then lo and behold, generations later, we come to find, nope, there's electromagnetic radiation. It can cause skin cancer.
Yep.
It can tan your skin. You need it actually to some degree. You need vitamin D.
You need enough of it, but not too much. Yep.
But then my problem is that science discovers all that in a way that they can replicate it and everything, and that's great. Good for you.
Yes.
That's fantastic. But then they turn right around and they pretend like they were the ones saying this and trying to prove this entire time. And it's like, in reality, you guys have been scoffing at this for years.
Let's take a great example and look at Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton, if you don't know, came up with the theory of gravitational force. Now, I use the word theory because a lot of people believe, Newton got it right about gravity. He did not. He only got it right about gravity when it comes to a certain range of sizable objects. So things within our universe, or rather, things within our galaxy, they could work in tandem with his equation. But if you get down to a molecular level, his entire theory falls apart, even though he states it's the universal gravitational law. Okay, it's a universal theory, so it should work with everything. It does not. And again, this is where a lot of the misconceptions and I guess the blind spots of science are, especially today. And we're men of science, you and I. We're definitely men of science.
I have respect for it.
Yes.
I'll say this. Science as a discipline and as a theory and as like a practice, as a body of knowledge, I really like it. I think it's been really
wonderful.
Good. I'm not a fan, especially like modern day, without to get too political.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, everything is. I'm not a big fan of the scientific community.
Yes, it's a people.
But it has less to do with their their methods and what they want to accomplish, so to speak.
It's more attached to the ego.
Yes, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
That's
But you could say that about any organized religion. You could say that about any body of government.
Any group of people.
Group of people, really. It goes back to the ego. We're not attacking science in any way, shape, or form. We love science in its theoretical ways, but what we're getting at
shortcomings.
Yeah, we're talking exactly. So Sir Isaac Newton, for example, for hundreds of years, everybody thought, well, this is just the way that it was, and then we discovered, molecular levels, Planck levels. We discovered things that were larger than Saturn, bodies that were much larger than galaxies. If you were to go up to most people these days who are not fully educated and they don't look into these topics, they'll tell you, well, Isaac Newton got gravity and blah blah blah, because that's just what the education system teaches you. You get the very, very vanilla flavor of it. You have to do your own personal research and find, no, it's actually, Isaac Newton was onto something great, but that doesn't mean that he was right fully, and that definitely doesn't mean that we can't add onto it. And that's, I think, the point that we're getting at. We have to take a look at these old traditional, basically anything, the religions and the way that they perceived astrology and astronomy, and incorporate what they believed, because these people had civilizations that lasted thousands of years. They
knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing. They weren't just superstitiously, sacrificing people and killing each other and blah, blah, blah.
All Saturn's in retrograde, better go kill the king.
Exactly. No, they weren't doing that. They actually had a system, they had an order, and they were fully reading the stars. And that's something that's very important. Like, we need to address these topics, because modern scientists that are very full of themselves can claim all they want that there's no evidence for that, but they're also not looking into it and they're not doing the research. Okay.
And our real point is, if we know for a fact that planets are giving off some form of radiation.
Right.
We know for a fact it does reach here, and we know for a fact it does in some way, shape, or form hit us human beings. Mm-hmm. I fail to understand then why the jump to say perhaps this has some influence on us and our personalities and how we feel over the course of a day. Science just throws their hands up and scoffs like that's so ridiculous. I don't understand why. Because then what? Because then the only other alternative then is that, okay, fact, the energy is coming off the planets. Fact, it gets reflected and bounced off and changed in a bunch of different ways. And then fact, hits here, goes to us, touches us. And then what? Oh, then it does nothing. It has no effect.
No effect.
That doesn't make any freaking sense whatsoever.